So I am actually going to create a new resource group here, Web App RG. The web app pool, we're going to put it in the East US as we have been doing. Notice availability zone that we want. Okay, now in this case, it's the availability zone within that particular region. I'll just say that. Orchestration mode is uniform. The image that you want to use, again, we'll just choose this. The size that you want to use, we still have to do the username and password. Okay, and then sure, that's fine. I have an eligible license. So next, we're just going to kind of go through. This is like I'm creating a virtual machine set. I'm not going to bother with disk. With networks, we will just have a single NIC. We're going to create a brand new VNet. That's the recommendation. If we use a load balancer, which we probably would be, okay. And then next, we have scaling. All right, so the initial instance count, how many of these VMs do we want? So let's do 5 VMs to start. And we're going to say the minimum number of instances, actually, let's change that to 2. Minimum number of instances is 2, maximum number of instances is 10. Versus manual, where you'd actually have to be monitoring it and you'd go in and scale out. So I want this to automatically happen. I want it to scale out when the CPU threshold is at 75% for a duration of 5 minutes, okay? And then I'm going to increase by 1. Scale in, scale back in when it's at 25% on one of the VMs for 1 minute, okay? And then the scale in policy, how are we going to do this? You know, balance across availability zones and fault domains. Yeah, that's probably the best. Go to management. The upgrade policies and whatnot, we don't really care about here. This is health monitoring for applications, which you probably will be doing. Scaling beyond 100 instances, no, we're not going to do that. And then tags. So basically then when we would review and then click create, it's going to create that virtual machine scale set initially with 2 separate instances of Windows Server 2016 in this case. All right. And then as the demand increases, then additional VMs will be automatically deployed with the exact same configuration. All right, so now it's on me to go in and actually configure the virtual machines and to configure them in the exact same way. But then you would just get basically a clone of those if a new VM was needing to be created. So there you have it, a quick look at the availability options and scale sets that we have in Azure. So Azure Virtual Machine extensions are really just small applications that do some post-deployment config and automation tasks. You know, when you're trying to create and maintain virtual machines, it can actually be a lot of work, but a lot of the work is very repetitive, you know, and so we're doing the same things on multiple machines. Stuff like, for instance, you know, disabling the security configuration wizard, installing Edge or Chrome on an operating system, you know, configuring certain security settings in the firewall. Those kinds of things could very well be automated. And that's what the VM extensions give us the ability to do. Now, they can be managed by the Azure CLI, PowerShell, the Azure Resource Manager templates, or the portal. You can bundle them in with new VM deployments, or you can run them against existing systems. Okay, so I mean, it could be a part of a larger templated deployment that after the deployment of the OS, then we need to go in and do these few things, or you can run it at a later time. We're going to just focus on 2, but there are multiple extensions that you can utilize. The 2 predominant ones are custom script extensions and then the PowerShell desired state configuration. So let's start with the custom script extension. These are used to launch and configure pretty much any post-deployment task that are necessary on a VM. Okay, they can be used to start and stop VPMs. They can be used to do software installation and updates. We can create additional directories and temp files for applications, and much more. You can write your own scripts and utilize those, or you can utilize public scripts that are available in GitHub and other repositories. Basically, all you're doing is calling this, you're setting the extension and you're specifying the location of the script and then how to go about running the script. Now, there are some other considerations like timeouts. The custom script extension has a 90-minute timeout, so if the deployment, for whatever reason, it seems very long, exceeds that time, then you need to make sure that you modify that. Dependencies, so networking, storage, we got to make sure all the content is actually available. Failure events, what's going to happen if the script fails? And then, based on the reason why it failed. And then also, do you have sensitive data in the extension? So that could be user account credentials, the names of storage accounts, maybe those SAS keys. Think about how you can go about protecting and encrypting that information. And then we've got desired state configuration, or DSC. Now, this has been around for a while, but is heavily utilized in Azure. It's a management platform that's based on PowerShell that provides us with a pretty easy method of deploying and managing configuration data. It was actually originally released because a lot of these machines in cloud environments are not members of a domain. And so if they're not members of a domain, then we don't have group policy. So how do we go about doing this? This can actually be done with the Windows 10 operating system as well, because it is a function of PowerShell. So DSC centers around this idea of creating a configuration. And so that's the fundamental component, and it's basically just an easier to read script that describes an environment that's made up of particular nodes with specific configurations, okay, such as install IIS, right? And we're just making sure that this installation is present because it's a web server. You do not need detailed knowledge of DSC, but it is likely that we would see some reference to it in the exam. There are three main components. The configuration block, which is the outermost script block, and it's defined using a particular keyword given a name. Okay, so for instance, web server install or something. The node block, which defines the computers that it's going to apply to, and then one or more resource blocks, which configures additional properties. All right, and so going with the web server example, then we're looking for a particular Windows feature. It's actually called web-server, and then we're saying, is it present or is it absent? Those are my two choices. And then if it is, if it's absent, then it will go about actually deploying those. So again, those are a couple examples. I mean, this is more advanced stuff that we may or may not need, but we definitely need to be familiar with the fact that these options exist. In this demonstration, we are going to be looking at custom script extensions. We've talked about a couple of different options that will allow you to deploy into existing virtual machines an additional configuration. And this can be very simple. It can be very complex. That's probably obvious in our little demonstration here. We're going to keep it a bit simple. So I'm going to go into this web app pool that I've just created, and we are going to look at instances. This is web app pool number 1. This is running Windows Server 2016. And I'm just going to try to connect here. And I may actually not be able to do this until I put in I'm doing it within the VM, but I don't have VNet peering on for these virtual networks. So let's go and turn that on. All right, so we've got PL test VNet. And then we'll go down to peerings. And we'll add a link to our other one. Okay, we're going to allow all traffic. Hit add. Oop. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not. We want the web app. There we go. So that should peer the two, and we've discussed that in a previous demonstration and shown how that is a quick and easy way to link to virtual networks. So we'll wait for that to complete, and that should allow us to actually connect. You do need to connect via RDP to these virtual machines in order to place things on the virtual machine that you want to execute. Okay, so like if I want to run a PowerShell script, well, the PowerShell script actually needs to be there. So let's go back. My scale set, an instance. We've got our two instances that we talked about in the previous version, the previous demo there, and we'll hit connect again. All right, so let's give this a shot now. And of course, we could assign a public IP. These web app pools, I didn't specify to do a public IP, but there we go. Now it is allowing us to make the connection as opposed to just failing initially. You know what? This might be MTech actually, not Marco. MTech, and then our password. There we go. Okay, so now we can connect. So this is again, if it's a regular machine, you're just basically kind of preparing this because we want to be able to do this as a custom script extension. So all it would take is for you to copy these files locally on those machines, and then you'll be able to do it. So here, you'll see what I mean. Let's go into command prompt first. We'll type in PowerShell, which connects us to the PowerShell prompt, and then I'm just going to verify that the web server feature is not installed. Okay. And so you will see that it is available, but there's not an X there, so it is not actually installed. So let's just open up Notepad, and we're going to go install Windows feature and web server. This is not case sensitive. You can also use PowerShell ISE, and that is certainly easier. It's certainly easier if you are doing, a bigger script. So we'll give this a PS1 file extension, and we're just going to put it right on the C drive. Although you can create a folder if you want. Actually, let's create a folder called scripts, and we'll just place it in there. Okay. All right. So save that, and now we can X out of that one. I want to X out of this one. Okay, so close that. Okay. Now, in the Azure portal, with your virtual machine selected, okay, we're going to just look here for individual extensions. Actually, let's go to the, well, you know what? This is not there in my scale set. That's the problem. So I'll click on this VM, and then we would go down any VMs, and then we would go down to extensions, and then I can add a particular extension. Now notice there are a lot of different extensions. So we've got antivirus, we've got Sentinel, we've got Network Watcher, which is diagnostics, but then we do have DSC and a custom script extension. Okay, you've got Microsoft anti-malware, so there's a lot of options. Now I know this is PowerShell, but it's not a DSC file, it's just a PowerShell script. So I'm basically just going in and saying, okay, I would like to create a custom script extension, and then I would like to upload this file. Okay, whoops, I apparently that's my fault. That file does not need to be on the VM. I misspoke when I said that. Okay, it's install Windows feature web server. Doesn't need to be on the VM. It should have been on my host machine there. And that was my mistake. So install IIS. .ps1, and we save it as all files. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in there. It doesn't really matter. Okay, and then we'll hit browse. Whoops, interesting. Okay, we're going to hit, I'll hit create again and hit browse. I'm not sure why it's taking me to storage accounts, which is very, very odd. Huh. Weird. Let's go back here and we're going to hit refresh again, because I'm not sure if something that I did caused that to happen, because it should just be prompting us to just upload the file. Okay, so we go to extensions, we go to add, we choose the extension type that we want. Can't even select them, so you got to scroll down. There you go. Now we're going to hit create. And now I'd like to browse to a file, and it keeps bringing me to these storage accounts. It's very odd. Okay, and I don't have one that's got a file share. So interesting that the first time it took me to documents, which is actually what we're looking for, and then and then it's actually taking me out and wanting me to throw the stuff in a storage account. Let's I'm just going to pick a different. Well, that's the same VM, but I just keep going out and coming back in and just seeing. So anyway, I mean, at this point you just need to upload, but for whatever reason it's being a little finicky for me. So you just need to point to that script, upload it, and then it's assigned to that VM. You give it a few minutes and that script will run, and we would see. Let me just try this. No, I can't do that either. Interesting. So we would upload the file. We would then just, click to save, and we would see it provisioned, and then you give it a few minutes and you go into your VM and you would see that custom script had been run. And in this case, the way that we would figure that out is that the web service would actually be installed. IIS would be installed on that machine. So a little bit flaky there on the interface. My apologies for that, but those are the steps. Create the script, go down to extensions, add a custom script extension, browse and find the file, and you are off and running.